is 3 after the hour. Post another link to the agenda. I am traveling today, so I don't have access to all my screens. So I am going to flip over to the document and I won't be able to see all of your smiling faces. So if somebody needs to speak up, please don't, it won't be rude. Just go ahead and work your way in because I won't be able to see your hand raised.
Okay. Yeah, and if you haven't already either undone or typed your name, by the way, one challenge with the way the font thing, I don't know if that translates to Markdown at all. We might want to stop doing that and just let people type it in.
Oh, the colors.
The attendees list.
Google let me do a fancy checkbox. Would that translate?
I have no idea.
And if you do it in the appropriate format, it's just whether it.
Yeah, you know what? I think that is a jury question. So I will dump it on poor jury. Yeah, she found. I've tried several Markdown translators, which were She found another one. I don't know if it's better or not, but she thinks
they're trying to convert all the meeting notes into Markdown and get them uploaded into Git.
Right. I mean, we could just translate them into PDFs, which fixes them, which makes them unchangeable, but also makes them harder to work with later.
All right, well, today is May 10th, and this is the meeting of the best working group in the OpenSSF, the Developer Best Practices Working Group, because it's focused on developers.
There's other working groups?
I know, exactly. I wouldn't know. My calendar doesn't reflect that.
CRob,
you need better material.
Like for the open source security, for the open source the event in Texas, you need a badge that says something along the lines of like, I'm part of all the something calling out your best working group.
I lead the best working group.
Yeah, I lead the best working group. Right? Yeah, there you go.
I'll be bringing my amazing hat to that, so that'll be fun. All right, so if you could mark your attendance in the agenda. And if you have any opens, please go ahead and put those on the agenda. If I could beg assistance in scribing some notes, it can be a team sport, just so we keep track of what's said and done. Yes, David.
I will, but if others would also, that would be great.
Awesome. Yeah,
I'll lend a hand.
Thank you both.
Tag
Appreciate
team.
it. Go team open source. We have any new friends that have joined us for the very first time that wanted to introduce themselves today? All right. Do we have, go ahead and add your opens. David, do you want to briefly cover your couple updates?
Yeah. So first of all, on the updates, we've had a number of folks contribute. Thank you. The links there is actually 2 one-pagers. One challenge is that Brian and I have been totally overwhelmed, primarily prepping for the White House meeting. There was also a death in the LF family I'll mention later. So my plan is to go back to that and try to wrap up on some of that and try to turn all those ideas into something that looks like a final product for further review. The next 2, if you don't mind, CRob, I'm just going to keep going.
Please, no, go for it.
So nothing new to say about the OpenSSF Best Practices badge. I mean, there was a library update with a vulnerability. No big deal. We do that all the time. Fundamentals course, couple things. OpenAI has agreed it's going to be okay to use the DALL-E 2 generated images in the fundamentals course. I sent out the email. Basically, if we don't charge for it, they say that's fine. I have already applied to their wait list. I have no idea when we get through the wait list. If there's somebody here who has some sort of inside contact, you got a friend in OpenAI, that would be awesome. Let me know. I don't know how long that wait list is, but if it's super long, I'd like to get a little faster, but that's not my call. So if it's somebody else's call, please let me know. On OpenSSF Day, I do plan to talk about education and training. I hope to have a secret announcement, but but I'll tell you on that day. I basically I want to have something to share that we can wait for on that. But the goal would get more access.
Secret announcements can be a tricky dribble in open source.
Indeed. So I don't know how to do this because I want to have a surprise and I want to share and be transparent. And this is hard. I will so maybe what I should do is the problem is if I post the mailing list, it becomes public instantaneously. So I don't know how to do this. So got an
But
idea is
if you tell us here, we can promise not to tell. And
no, you can't
we
because
can-
this is recorded and this is posted on YouTube.
Yes,
Just
but
the internet can see it.
how often are people really watching the videos?
You know, you might be surprised.
Actually, I
So-
would be surprised.
But nothing untoward. It's just simply we've got some ideas on how to get the materials that we've developed distributed more widely. Enough said. All right, let's see. And who's next? Do we have anybody from the SKF team? I know several were not able to be here today.
Don't see any of them.
I do have a good transitional question.
Okay.
Please.
So I wanted to get the group's opinion on, so we've got training available that the Linux Foundation has graciously made available for no charge, including the certification. And I believe that's approximately 12 to 18 hours of training, depending upon the individual's ability to absorb the material. And I've heard some requests or suggestions from a couple of different audiences that developers just may not take advantage of that because that's a non-trivial time commitment that they'll look at and go, too long, not going to read it, got to keep moving. I've got features and functions to add to my code today.
Right.
And we're developing a one-pager, which is great, but that one-pager is substantially points to training that's hours and hours of training. Is there a bite-sized amount of welcome to open source security, you KG developer, you don't want to miss this, and it's only 2 hours of your time? Is there a way to develop something that's more consumable and a lower hurdle for the average open source developer to step over rather than have to get a running leap? Or is that just so inconsequential that it's not worth the baby step? Discussion.
I have discussion. I actually have done such things in the past. I actually went over to and I've given several such presentations. In fact, I gave one. Probably the larger group I remember was over in Europe. There's a larger conference that happens in the university. No. Anyway, I have done such things. We don't have such material today. Such could be developed. As with all such things, there's a trade-off. Shockingly, in an hour or two, you cover a whole lot less than you can cover in about 16.
This is CRob's cue to do his shocked face.
Yes, there we go. Okay. Yeah, and we intentionally did the 16-hour in part because we're asking. There is a fundamental challenge. I have an engineering degree. I had to spend years of my life learning. The expectation that in developers, it's okay to have an hour and then you're ready for intelligent adversaries. We're sending them out a lot less prepared. You could make the same argument for the 16-hour course too, by the way. But so I would
Well, I
say,
think we'd all probably agree that writing more secure code is a marathon, not a sprint.
right. So could we do that? Absolutely. To be fair, the course materials are based on work that I've done over years and years, which is building up, and we can easily subset, shorten, and nothing else. What I would say is, if you're doing a 1 or 2 hour, what you're probably focusing more on is awareness. I see a hand from Mr. CRob, who leads this meeting anyway.
So, can we share anything about what's going on this week, or do we have to wait till our next call?
But the White House thing,
Yes.
I I think we should. Maybe we should make that part of the opens. So, in fact, I'm going to make this discussion part of the opens now, so we know. Maybe we should create.
It's
1 to
already in
2.
the opens
Oh,
So,
where?
down below.
To
Oh,
Jeffrey
okay.
and Eric's points, there has been some external conversation about just this. How do we take the existing materials, identify are there gaps or areas we want to do new or augment things, and then try to brainstorm on some ways to evangelize that, get that out to the masses in several different formats. Do we want to share, nothing formalized yet. Do we want to talk about some of the specifics of the proposal, David?
Okay, of which proposal? I'm sorry, I was taking notes.
The best stream, stream 1, the
Oh,
education
okay.
stream.
Gracious. How do I summarize? I mean, the quick summary is education good, ignorance bad. Uh, basically, we don't have, most developers don't have little or no actual training on how to develop secure software, and that's whether or not they go to a university and learn computer related courses or not, boot camps and so on. The last numbers I saw were something like 47% of software developers have had university courses on developing. So a slight majority haven't had any, and even if you have, you're unlikely to have ever experienced this. It's not. Yeah.
May I share?
Sure.
All right. So the OpenSSF is having a summit later this week with some government officials to talk about some proposals to help improve open source security. And it's based off of a lot of the work that's already existing and finding ways to augment and amplify that. And one of the areas, as David mentioned, is a focus on education. And we brainstormed a lot of different ideas. And ultimately, it's going to come down to do we have experienced and willing people that are interested in contributing to develop some of these new methods. One of the ideas is to taking David's existing classes and trying to transform that into like a boot camp style thing that you can provide at developer conferences, use Nix or those types of things. Other ideas were approaching creating webinars, creating a podcast that you could potentially focus in on. Today's podcast is what is SQL injection and how to avoid it. We can think about many different ways to deliver this content. And then we're looking to try to find folks that are interested in helping provide this education to developers in a lot of different areas. And exactly, we're looking to influence high school and college curriculums, work in try to get this training out to groups that are historically not included in these types of conversations. So like Girls Who Code, historically Black colleges and universities, these types of things, technical schools. So we're just brainstorming on different ways and different avenues we can deliver this content. And my personal intention is to we have an amazing group of people that are very interested in open source security for developers. And we potentially could leverage this group to help create, give, or at least generate ideas on how to get this content out to the masses.
And CRob's a great straight man, because on that work stream, I also shared that, as some folks may be aware, as part of the initial cybersecurity meeting at the White House mid last year, the IBM CEO put on the table the initiative that IBM was going to undertake to support cybersecurity education, engaging with the top 20 HBCUs to help educate and create the next generation of cybersecurity experts. And that focus is more on the sort of the reactive side of the equation, and interested in aligning on the more proactive side of helping to get the developers. So I'm sure that'll come up as a topic during the meetings later this week.
Before I jump to Eric to address Spiros's first question, initially this will be US focused because there's a meeting this week already, but there are many governments around the globe, especially in EMEA, that are also very interested in this topic. So I think this will very quickly branch out. And our intention always was to try to make this as widely available as possible, as neutral as possible. And there's even some plans, like in the longer term, to try to get some of the content that exists localized into different languages. So now I'll turn over to Eric, and then we can talk through the rest of Spiros's questions.
Yeah, just generally as part of this group, as we're talking about best practices and other components, I mean, certainly the training aspect is a huge part of that, and chopping it into smaller kind of a series of webinars and other components is one great way to do this. But one of the things to consider, right, is it has to start at that developer level, and traditional cybersecurity is really more focused on the network and infrastructure, rather than somebody learning Java or C++ or COBOL or whatever language. Probably don't teach COBOL in college anymore. I'm a little removed from that, but just in general, yeah. Well, I mean, it's yeah. I mean, you have to learn. Yeah, you have to take history classes, right? But in any case,
the mainframe is selling more MIPS today than ever before. You'd be surprised.
Because we love.
Yeah. I mean, I started my career in COBOL, so I can make those jokes. But it's in this conversation point where that development level of coding aspect is really the key kind of discussion point here, I think. Beyond, because a lot of organizations will do that reactive, and getting that proactive kind of shift left is the area of training those developers from, as I noted, from high school and college and otherwhere. But the trade school aspect of like the ITT Techs and all those other type of schools, DeVry's, that a lot of people don't really think as much about. You see it on TV, and a lot of people kind of dismiss them as certain kind of things, and that's just not how it should be. But generally, how do we set up a best practice documentation and a series of webinars outside of this broader discussion this week that is just sets kind of a standard for what needs to happen for any development project as far as best practices. And one of the big areas I think that needs to be developed out is what the actual use cases are. For all of these, defining very clearly, what are you trying to achieve? We have a charter and all of the other components around what we're trying to achieve at a high level, but actually practically showing them how you apply these practices at each stage, and incorporation with things. I'm a big fan of the SALSA framework, but I mean just incorporation of how a developer actually leverages these best practices rather than just a nebulous training exercise at a high level. It really needs to be contextualized to fit various cases, which I think should be a focus. my opinion, should be a hard focus on some of the material we provide.
And that was our intention with the newbies view of a future project we were hoping to eventually start work on. We've never had the time to get around to, but that was sort of the intention, Eric, is to map out different tasks or learning paths or stages in an SDLC and dive in and identify training, documentation, tools that help in those particular areas. David, and then we'll march down the questions in chat.
Yeah, so a couple quick notes. First of all, in defense of poor Jeff Borek, the LF actually has a course on how to develop COBOL. A vast number of people won't get their payroll checks without COBOL. So
yeah, no, I need no defense there. That's it's the IT ecosystem is broad and inclusive, and the good thing that creates job security for everyone is that as much as our end clients adopt new technologies, they rarely unplug old ones.
Yeah, and I understand that. Just as a key, defense back against that is I started my career in COBOL. I know the value of it, and a lot of companies still use it. It's just shocking to me that it's something that kids nowadays are still learning in college, because it's not the preferred new technology for a lot of 20-somethings, right?
Yeah.
So it's
No
got
one, not a lot of people roll out of bed in the morning thinking, boy, what COBOL applications am I going to write today? But again, having said that, I'll bring some sparklers to the next meeting. You'd be surprised at the statistics.
So regarding the cybersecurity education, not focusing on developers, I think that's absolutely right. But we do need to do the whole shift left thing. I've commented that a lot of cybersecurity today is essentially turning knobs on the insecurable, hoping that if you turn the knob just the right way, it'll suddenly become secure. It hasn't worked for several decades. I don't know why we think it's going to start now. I'm not opposed, by the way, to applying systems thinking. Absolutely applied systems thinking. Try to eliminate vulnerabilities or reduce privileges where you can, but starting from the beginning is a better long-term goal. One of the comments was about how do we get not just high level, show how it applies. This is a real challenge, especially when you talk short term. Here's 1 hour. I want you to show me exactly how to do all this. Oh, and tell me everything, and you have an hour. Something's gonna have to give. It's okay to do, here's a very broad brush, or here we're gonna focus on one specific thing. Or here we're gonna do both, and we're gonna spend some time. But I think we're gonna need multiple presentations and other materials for different situations, because I don't know, I go back to my engineering experience. I didn't get a double E degree in an hour. Civil engineers don't get a degree in an hour. So we need to level expectations based on time available.
And just think about how long Glenn has been adding labs to SKF, and those are more
Right.
hands-on, and it takes time. And as we move forward on this journey together and trying to figure out ways to get this education and awareness out, kind of the sky's the limit, and all patches are welcome. So to Yotam's point, if practical hands-on training is great, if you have some ideas or if you are interested in trying to put some material together, we're not going to say no. I think everything is useful, and different learners are going to learn different ways. Jonathan.
Please forgive me, I'm driving.
Be careful.
Yeah, I know. One of the things that's been kicking around my head is how to scale security researcher knowledge, how to scale security knowledge better, right? And you can train 1 million people, or you can just encode the knowledge that you need to have in an automated. One of the things, first, the knowledge being out there is really important. But how do you encode the knowledge into a system that can automatically apply that knowledge in a way that is useful? And so one of the things that I'm working on, collaborating with, is the
project like Open Rewrite, which I'm trying to encode. For example, there are security vulnerabilities. They follow these common patterns. Here's how to rewrite the source code in your project to fix those vulnerabilities. Another application of that is, like we were talking about COBOL earlier. I know that the Open Rewrite project is currently targeting, I believe, COBOL code, because there's a lot of COBOL applications out there that have never been touched because there's a lot of risk around touching those applications and potentially breaking these very old systems that nobody knows how to fix. And so if you can throw a recipe that is, okay, you need to update to the newest version of COBOL, here's a bunch of stuff that broke, but we've already written an automated tool that will refactor all your code to know to get you updated to the newest version. And you may need to make a few tweaks here or there, but like your risk is going to be much lower because this sort of recipe has been applied a lot before to solving this problem. You can take that knowledge that is and encode that in these tools to help assist people make those leaps. Security, I'm not just thinking about security vulnerabilities. I'm also thinking like just getting people to update, right? Update their dependencies, update their tools. That's a big, that can be a big lift and a big engineering burden regardless of the security risk and the awareness of the risk. So how can we create tools that make it so that that's a lot easier? And there are efforts in that area that are currently ongoing, which I'm thrilled to be involved with. So.
Cool. Thank you, Jonathan. David, you have more thoughts? But you're on mute.
Yes, silent thoughts.
Silent thoughts. Well, they weren't silent on my end.
I was not ready to overdub you.
All right, so I actually agree with Jonathan that where we can, we should absolutely automate what we can. But I don't think it's I think it's a have to have both. The reality is not everything can be put in a tool, and probably more importantly is we need to have developers cooperating with the tools and using them in sensible ways. Hey, I see this rewrite, but I'm going to reject it because I liked my code and yours looks weird. I can't tell the number of times that I've seen people who don't understand what the tool's doing, and as a result, the tool's completely ineffective. So we really have to do both. It's good, by the way, to have the tools, but we need both. Done.
Agreed. So as we move forward, I hope to harness all your great ideas, and we can start working and making some progress on some of these items. Marta.
Thanks. I wanted to add one point. One of my biggest difficulties I have is passing after some security researchers have shown people how to develop secure software. So they have given them a lot of specs and stuff and tools they cannot use. So the people decided it's not for them, they are not going to do it. And trying to fix that issue, that's one of my biggest challenges.
It's going to take a lot of efforts at a lot of different levels. And I think approaching this from different angles is going to make us more successful. Talking to researchers, talking to developers, talking to suppliers. Maybe we need to, some of the larger companies that actually contribute a lot to open source, we need to help them kind of put it as part of their regimes, understanding secure coding practices as well. A lot of different ideas. We have a half hour. What would we like to work on today? We're going to for David's.
CRob,
yes, John.
CRob, just to follow up on that really quickly. One of the things that trying to teach people how to write secure code is a really great endeavor. But one of the things that I rail against quite a bit is the amount of effort and energy that is regularly spent to try to teach people how to write secure code instead of making it so that the defaults are sane and secure by default. For example, like one of the things that I'm chasing down currently is I'm chasing the Oracle team around the OpenJDK and the XML parsers in the entire Java standard library are all vulnerable to XXE by default. Like, why, right? Let's make the default secure instead, right? Let's go. Like, I was looking through the Python standard library. The thing that unzips tar files is insecure by default and vulnerable to zip flip, right? Like, Why are these things vulnerable by default and like giving people the ability to shoot themselves in the foot? Let's try to build these systems and work with people to make these things more secure up front so that people, you know, it's harder to shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, Jonathan, can I respond with an answer? The reason that they're making the insecure one the default is because we haven't educated developers to make the default the secure option. It's both. This is not one of those we must choose one or the other. We must choose both. But in fact, in the fundamentals course, and I assume this is also in the SKF folks course. I haven't. I guess the SKF folks have now pulled in the other course, so by at least one measure, it's in there. The fundamentals course specifically talks about the requirement to make the default approach the secure one. And I think that that's at least in part the answer is every time you make a new API, and we're all making new APIs pretty much, you know, the vast majority of the time when we're writing new software, you know, making sure that that's the default, that the secure one's the default one. But if we don't teach people that, you're just going to fight that battle after they've already fixed the API, and it's hard to change now. And the next person who creates a new API, they'll do exactly the same thing again because we're not reaching them. We're fixing the problem afterwards. We want to go as left as we can in the timeline.
Vicky.
I have kind of a new topic if you're open to that.
I'm open source to that, yes.
Excellent. I thought you might be. So lower hand. Excellent. Ooh, look, they have a new lower hand button in the new client. Awesome. It like stays up when you've got your hand up. So you anyway, so my topic. Yeah, so I was skimming the one-page guide here. And I was wondering, leading question, anticipating the answer, yes, would it be helpful for someone to recruit some early stage developers and put this in front of them and get their comments on it to make sure that what we're developing is legitimately useful for the target audience? Because what we've got here are a whole bunch of people who know this stuff already, frankly, and it's kind of an echo chamber, and we are moderately experienced with talking to other people about it. So we have a pretty good idea of what people need to hear, but I want to make sure that what we're doing is the most effective way to do it. And then, you know, in the future, we can talk about how are we now going to promote this and get it in front of people, you know, make it as easy as possible. One click, there's the thing, right? Even a microsite, right? Anything like that. But thankfully, we've got a new marketing person for OpenSSF, Jennifer, who can help us with that sort of stuff. So do you mind if I take that on? I will need, we'll need to open up the document so people can add their comments to a Google Doc.
It's already opened if you've requested it. I do have a suggestion though. The one pager isn't quite ready. So Vicky, I would say recruit people, but don't sick them on it yet because the sausage is only half made.
Okay.
But start recruiting people now, and then tell them we're in the process of getting a doc ready. Once it's more ready, we'd love to get your feedback. And
Okay.
you know what? I'm expecting the initial comment is, gee, this isn't the final doc. I have to read other things. That's kind of the point.
Yeah.
You know, I am always concerned about the folks who say I want to know everything. I have half an hour.
Yeah, that I'm also rather skeptical of something like that. So yeah, I can start gathering some people and see whether we can't get a pool of maybe max 5. We don't want to overload anyone with comments.
That sounds right.
Okay. When do you anticipate we'll be able to put this in front of folks?
2
Yeah,
2 weeks probably.
not this week.
Yeah, I think 2 weeks at the earliest. I mean, really, I'm not going to get to look at this till next week, and I suspect the same is true for others. But I think anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks 2 weeks may be a little ambitious, but 4 we should certainly be able to do.
Okay,
Look
so
at this,
I'll wait a
CRob.
couple weeks.
CRob wants ambition.
Well, I imagine we're going to have a lot of additional work by the end of the week.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But
So probably 4 weeks is probably more rational. Yeah, because no matter what we do, when we think we're done, we'll immediately get, oh, but wait, and we'll have at least another round. So
yeah. Okay, well then I will, I don't want to recruit people and then put them on hold because then I'll lose their attention. So once we get more, we get closer to it being done, in a couple of 2-3 weeks, we've got, a few things going on aside from that. Then I will start to recruit some additional people, and Eric has volunteered his team. I know he's got a bunch of folks who could give a lot of good feedback as well. So we'll try and get a broad, well, yes, Mr. CRob, sir.
another idea, we do have an awesome series, a virtual flotilla of Linux security conferences coming up in June, all in 1 week. And if anyone's going, that might be a nice place to mention, hey, do you have 5 minutes to take a survey after this call, after this meeting? I'll be there, so if you want to give me the questionnaire, I'd be glad to ask people. But the LF's like 1,000 conferences in 1 week.
Yeah, be careful what you ask for. You also get 1,000 responses.
I know, but yeah, that would be another place to actually talk to, hopefully, open source practitioners.
Yeah, I would suggest do the 5 focused group and then take their fixes and then bring it out, because just it's easier with a smaller group first, and let's fix those issues before we send it out to a larger group. But I like the idea.
All right, so let's circle back. Spiros, you mentioned EMEA, and that definitely is an area we don't want to overlook. And then you talk about what it makes sense to provide security tools to dev to make it easier to integrate and consume. So absolutely, and that is one of the ideas that's mentioned in the streams work. We talked about that. We talked later this week with the government officials. So that is an option, is to provide developers easier access to tools. And there are some companies that do that today. And hopefully we might be able to influence others to be more open-minded for open source developers to allow open source use. Did I address both your points, sir? Cool. So in our last 20 minutes, let's talk about what scenarios we would like to focus on for this newbies project. What types of tasks or learning paths, what types of things we want to start focusing our training on. So for example, code signing. Would that be something that would be useful to provide training on for developers? That's something we want to encourage. Or securing your CI/CD system, or managing access controls. So what types of things would we like to focus on? These assorted little learning scenarios. Eric.
Yeah, well, I mean, the obvious first answer is always going to be all of the above. But as we kind of start working through this, I think code signing is definitely something a lot of developers either don't know anything about or kind of peripherally have heard about, but always think that's kind of the operations guy's problem. So diving into the tools like SigStore and kind of giving practical example of not just a walkthrough, but actually potentially something they can step through themselves with an actual task, accompanied maybe by a video. But everybody uses, and this CI/CD becomes a little more complicated because you just have to pick one, right? Yeah. There's so many variant tools out there, and which ones are slightly more popular currently. But I think doing something like just how simple it is to incorporate SNCC or some of these, and this should be a series, because if we're going to do the CI/CD, it should be, well, you have a Jenkins pipeline or you have GitHub Actions. This is how you can secure that, by incorporating a vulnerability tool. We'll start with SNCC. Now, you took this other series one of SigStore. Well, if you've taken that, this is how you incorporate that into, following this previous series, this is how you incorporate that into your CI/CD pipeline until, the series takes you through these components and configurations, if you're like tools like Blue Bracket or other things, until you've built out a complete SALSA compliant kind of CI/CD or SDLC, right? So a series that kind of takes them through you have no idea what you're doing with this. Here's the simple task of incorporating this tool and then this one and this one. Now you've got a fully functional, secure CI/CD pipeline because you followed the series of each one of these individual things, of which has a hands-on element, not just a, follow the PowerPoint. Because I personally don't learn too well from just following a PowerPoint. I need to actually get my hands into it to do that. And I think a lot of developers are the same. They can, follow the concept, but won't really learn anything until they play with it. So that's my opinion. I think it should be a series at that kind of lower level, single tool at a time, but that it all incorporates into a larger series that gets them fully over time, gets them kind of fully capable of doing end-to-end SDLC security.
Okay. That's a good suggestion. Thank you, sir. Vicky.
I really like the idea of using SALSA as kind of a framework and a basis for, this, when we know done is for a first pass on this. It's like, okay, now you know how to make something SALSA compliant, but you still need to start somewhere. You need a first step, right? And so I'd be interested in hearing from perhaps Jonathan and David as far as what is the most common, what's the lowest hanging fruit? What's the thing that we can teach people about relatively quickly that is more likely to solve problems? I mean, is it access control? Is it, what is that lowest hanging fruit? And the people who do this all day, I think are going to have that insight. I don't, but to me, it would be something like access control. But I know that there are so many places to start.
Right. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of places to start. If you're talking about things from I guess I would split the world development and then distribution. On the development side, I think that, I'm sorry.
Have an ops.
Well, and we have ops too, and increasingly, I think for the I didn't mention ops more because on the ops side, there's a lot more stuff already there. You never have enough. There's always things you need to do, but it's the development and distribution parts that I think get shorter shrift. On the if on the strictly development side, the OWASP top 10 for web application development and the CDB top 25 is a darn good place to start. And if you look, you'll see things like SQL injections and buffer overflows. They're boring. We all know about them. Well, we mean the people who are in this particular meeting. Joe developer or Joanna developer has no clue and won't tomorrow either. No one tells them a darn thing. This comes back to Jonathan's point about making it easy. Everybody knows how to do string concatenation. That's easy. That's how we get SQL injections. Yay! And you know what? Tomorrow, string concatenation is still going to be easy. And it's still going to have SQL injections. And Jonathan's driving, so we're going to try to not cause him to have an accident. I want to see Jonathan, no accidents, please. I don't want to see that on the cam. The challenge isn't that it's not hard to use things like prepared statements. The problem is developers have no clue that those exist or why one might use them. So we've made it fairly easy, but we still need to educate the developers to use them. And we also need to make sure that they have the tools to use. And Jonathan has his hands up. So please no accidents, but please carry on.
Sorry about that. So I am loath to. I know there's a bunch of effort going on within the Open Source Security Foundation around code signing, and I see the value, but It's not the way that people are primarily getting pwned, right? The OWASP has been very clear for the past several years that the biggest risk to open source like application security is, and it continues to be on the list, the top 10 is using components with known vulnerabilities, right?
Right.
So where do we tackle that problem? Speaking from the perspective of Gradle, Gradle's story around that is terrible. Gradle is used to build 50% of all, 50% of all Java applications, 99% of all Android applications, and that story currently sucks, right? So, trying to both solve that problem to make it easier for users to just like add automated dependency updating, both from the side of like, here's how you do it, but also like, hey, here Gradle or here GitHub, here is, $100,000, $200,000, go solve this problem for, these tools, because these tools don't have this support and they need it in order to solve this endemic, well understood, well known problem throughout open source. Let's just solve the dependency updating story. And then I would, kind of go through the OWASP list of like, here are the top most common vulnerabilities. You don't really want to do OWASP's job because they're already doing it pretty well, I think. But that list of like, here are the top vulnerabilities, the ways that applications get pwned, like these are the things that you as a developer should understand and know. That would be a good resource to tackle.
Right. Yeah, and really, I think. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was gonna say, basically,
I just think that it would, I'm trying to figure out. I've been kicking around my head like, okay, where do I find like a couple $100,000 just throw at GitHub or Microsoft, or sorry, not Microsoft, at GitHub or Gradle, or to go finish the Dependabot story, go and make it so that like those solutions work better for Dependabot and Renovate and all those other tools that are out there and available for open source for free.
Yeah, if I can quickly respond, I agree that, well, clearly using known vulnerable components is a big deal, and we have Dependabot and so on, but we need to get those in the various systems. I think people are talking at least about trying to integrate those into, say, the package managers, so you get warned automatic. The more we can put those warnings in front of folks, and ideally push the button and accept this pull request, that'll fix it. It gives us at least a rationale. Get going. What? I'm sorry, that hurt. What?
We're just having a little friendly conversation.
Yes, I see a little side conversation on the chat. Okay, Jonathan.
I think that hand was still up.
I was actually just popping over. I was popping over to drop my hand. No, I agree. Yeah, to your point, right? Getting Dependabot to work, right? Like those, I think it's enabled by default on new GitHub repositories now, but it still doesn't. I think so. I know that GitHub has made a bunch of moves in that area. I think the problem that still exists is that it doesn't support everything, right? It trying to get the coverage of those tools. And, for example, one of the problems with Gradle is that Gradle ecosystem is not really well set up for Dependabot as a tool. And so I spent a much time before when I was working for Gradle trying to solve the problem of like, okay, how do we get these tools to integrate better with what we want to do, like the way that we have dependencies declared, like how can we make it easier for those tools? And so like the evangelism of like, let's sit down and actually work with these tools and maintainers to like get those stories of automated, like basically make the dependency updating story a first class story and a first class user experience for these dependency management tools.
Yeah, and I will say, if you integrate with LFX, you also get dependency analysis as well. But your point still stands. And there's a huge number of challenges even with that. Things like, hey, I could update, but it breaks something else. which maybe is a broader educational issue, which is we need to somehow get developers when they update. Please don't break the APIs. A lot of folks, oh, I want to rename. I'll just make everybody rename everything. I mean, how hard is it to rename everything? Well, if you've got a million line program, actually really a pain in the butt, especially in dynamic language where, yes, it may have the same as 12 other methods.
There is an effort undergoing. So part of the Open Rewrite project is this idea, this high-level idea that when developers want to break their APIs, they can also ship rewrite recipes with their APIs to allow the end user developer to apply patches that'll automatically get applied during the update process. I still think that's kind of a like pie in the sky sort of dream, like long-term dream, but it does aim towards a direction of it. We could aim to shift the industry around not just breaking APIs, but also supplying the like, here's how to rewrite your code to fix that.
Vicky and then me, I think.
Well, if you're going to follow up on what Jonathan said, then I'll let you do that, and then I'll go after you.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to follow on. You know, I'm one of the survivors of the Python 2 to 3. Basically, I have opinions. The Python 2 to 3 transition was a disaster for its first 7 years, and really we're still feeling the effects. You know, lots of companies have easily spent tens of millions of dollars for what was a mostly which didn't help them very much. The Python developers for several years thought that, hey, I'll just deliver this Python 2 to 3 translation tool. And yeah, the fact that I changed all the interfaces, not a problem. We'll just do it. Well, it turns out that Python isn't a statically, doesn't pre-declare all the variable types. So it was essentially impossible to write a tool that automatically rewrote the code because it didn't have enough information to do it properly. And I think that's, although, in cases where you've added type information, you have a better fighting chance, but it is still challenging. And I would challenge you to rewrite large code bases in Python or Ruby or JavaScript if they don't have type information. Even with type information, it's a challenge. So Jonathan, I'm not opposed, of course, to having rewrite rules that help you, but past experience has not been kind. People have done this before and shown how it doesn't work much more than they have shown that it works for a lot of languages. You just don't have the data necessary to do the job well. So new topic, Vicky?
Yeah, briefly, because we've only got 4 minutes. Just want to throw the idea out there, don't need to debate it today, but I'm a technical advisor for Pragmatic Bookshelf, the publisher. And so really what we're discussing is writing a curriculum and resources for, how to do secure software. Why don't we actually just write it and get it published? Do you want me to run it past Pragmatic and see whether they'd be willing to work with us on this? There would be complications as far as, payments and stuff like that. Maybe that's something we can figure out how to waive, but getting these in the actual book form, even as just, they have a lot of these short digest books now that they're publishing. That gives us another way to get it out in front of people, and it makes it easier for professors and other teachers to put it in front of their students. If they've got this collection of books, okay, we're working through these now. Is that worth pursuing in the future? Not necessarily today, but I'm willing to help if so. David's like, maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've written 2 books. I do know the process. I honestly am not sure how effective in the current world, but I mean, we can certainly talk about it. I would not commit to a particular publisher right now. I would kind of let's talk about what that would cover. I mean, heck, the fundamentals course could be trivially turned into a book right now. It's if you wanted to do it that way in a reformat. the question is effectiveness, and so on. But I wouldn't commit to the publisher first. Let's first talk about what we would publish, and then go from there. I know I was approached by several publishers way back when on my secure programming book, but it wasn't clear how effective that mode was today. Maybe.
Yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
let's not discount it. That is a potential avenue, and let's write it down. And as we start to gel and aggregate all this material, we can see what best avenues we have to get it out.
Yeah.
All right, folks, any closing thoughts as we approach the top of the hour?
Can I just do a quick follow-on review? I think I would say go ahead at least and discuss, but don't try to commit to any particular publisher. That's what my concern would be right now. Is it's not crazy. Just I don't want to make it sound like it's a commitment to them.
Oh, no, I certainly wouldn't commit anything.
Okay.
I know them all personally, so, I can just bounce some ideas off of them and nothing else. If it's not a good fit, they might know where some additional alternatives, because they've been investigating a lot of that stuff themselves, right?
Got it.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. A very engaging and interesting conversation today. Thank you for your time, and looking forward to building this awesome library of content to get out there in front of developers. Thanks all. Have a good day.
Bye. Thanks.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Yeah.